Welcome back for the finale of What If Ahsoka Joined Vader. Thank you for your support so far in this series. If you haven't seen the other episodes, please go watch those first before watching this video. The link to the playlist will be in the description below. Ahsoka and Vader took off with the partially completed Death Star, ready for the upcoming battle. Vader knew that the Emperor would have sensed his betrayal, and would likely be in the process of training a new apprentice. So whilst the training was incomplete, the time to strike was now. Eventually reaching the super weapon, Vader internally growled, the station symbolizing all he hated about the Emperor. Approaching the Death Star, the duo was surprised to find they are allowed to dock without question, as they had assumed the Emperor would have notified his officers of Vader's shuttle. Touching down, Vader leads them to a rear entrance, which is unknown to most officers, and together they make their way around the station. Although the Emperor had not mentioned any plans of a throne room, Vader knew that wherever his former master was, it would be a place of significance. Finally entering a dimly lit and spacious room, they feel a darkness, but oddly, not one Vader could associate with Sidious. Hearing the sound of a lightsaber ignite, Vader and Ahsoka responded by igniting their own. Suddenly, the duo were force pushed down some steps, as out emerged Ezra Bridger, his eyes cold with hatred. Ahsoka and Vader were smart enough to know that Ezra was merely a bait. But what was the trap? Pressing a small button on his wrist, Ezra watched as the floor beneath Vader and Ahsoka opened, dropping them into what seemed like a prison complex. Should have seen that coming, remarked Ahsoka to Vader, earning a piercing glare. Suddenly, they're surrounded by knockout gas, and before they knew it, the duo was rendered unconscious. Meanwhile, Yoda and Obi-Wan had finished the last elements of Luke's training, preparing for a battle with the Emperor. Yoda decided that he should remain behind, in case Obi-Wan and Luke were to fail in their mission. With a final wave to the old Grand Master, the duo set off, allowing the Force to guide them to their location. Despite the cramped cockpit, Obi-Wan meditated, sensing something was amiss. Previously, the Force had told him there was clouded in darkness, but now he sensed the darkness was caving in on itself. Perhaps Yoda was correct. The apprentice now wanted to dethrone the master. Although on his past days on Tatooine Obi-Wan didn't want to believe it, he knew Anakin was the apprentice. No, not Anakin, chided Obi-Wan to himself, but Vader. Finally reaching the destination, they came across a vast structure, which to the casual observer could be mistaken for a planet. Allowing themselves to be drawn in, they readied themselves for the second part of the operation. Landing in the same hangar as Ahsoka and Vader had done, they attempt to hide themselves behind Vader's TIE Advanced. Although the Imperial troopers were quick to respond, Obi-Wan and Luke used their Force techniques to evade the blaster fire, and together, they headed down a small corridor, in relief that they had evaded the main legion of Imperials. Entering a dark room, their senses are immediately on alert, as they hear the humming and swinging of a lightsaber. Luke moved first to the presence, and noticed it was someone relatively young, and full of conflict. This must have been what Obi-Wan was referring to. Landing a few precise hits whilst Obi-Wan lumbered over, Luke managed to find a route through Ezra's unpolished defences, as he was clearly still getting used to his new dark side powers, and slashed his side. Ezra groaned in pain, as Obi-Wan used a rare Force technique to put Ezra into a state of unconsciousness. Seeing Ezra was a surprise, and the duo wondered what else the Emperor had in store for them, as they continued to sneak aboard the station. Back in the prison complex, Ahsoka and Vader awoke to a horrible sight. Surrounded by dozens of stormtroopers who were pointing blasters at their heads, they formed a small guard of honour as Palpatine walked through the cell door, with his hands together in eagerness. Dismissing his stormtroopers, Sidious menacingly walked around the duo, who were bound by stun cuffs. Palpatine further rubbed his hands in anticipation, readying himself for a lightning attack. Suddenly, an Imperial officer burst through the door, panting out of breath, telling the Emperor that Ezra had been found incapacitated by a small gash by his side. He would deal with the pesky duo later. But first, he would fatally punish his new apprentice for his failure. Ahsoka breathed a sigh of relief after having survived that wave of interrogation. Looking down at her cuffs, she was surprised to find her cuffs were relatively simple in design. It seems the Emperor was far too focused on Vader. Searching through the Force, Ahsoka found a release mechanism, one which she was familiar with from the Clone Wars, and dismantled it using a small clip she had found by the foot of the cell door. Stretching her hand, she rushes over to Vader, whose restraints used an electronic release mechanism. Reaching out with the Force, Ahsoka locates a small spot outside of the cell and finds a remote. Using the Force, she pulls it to her hand, and pushing the button, she watches in relief as Vader's cuffs spring open. However, Ahsoka could not locate her or Vader's lightsabers in their vicinity. With a joint effort, the duo crushed the cell bars, allowing them to step back out into the hallway. Although Vader had not known of the complex being built, he remembered coming up with the designs. He hoped the Emperor hadn't deviated from his original outlines too much for their sake. In spite of the darkness, the duo managed to make their way to a crossroad, and using the Force, rip off the gate of an air vent above them, and clamber through. Vader did his best to ensure his armour did not rattle upon the sides of the narrow passageway, as they made their way through to the ground level of the Death Star. Hiding their Force signatures, they jump out of a small cover in the ground, and make their way back to the throne room. Outside stood several royal guards, whom an observant Ahsoka spotted were equipping their lightsabers. Surging to the surprised royal guards, Ahsoka summons a huge Force wave, which wipes out all of the royal guards. Picking up their lightsabers, they ignite them, ready for the battle. The trouble was, there was already a battle going on. Vader's eyes narrowed in fury under his mask, as he saw his old master was well and truly still alive, as well as a young man, who bore striking resemblance to Anakin Skywalker. A forced stalemate in their jaw allowed for the trio to look at the new arriving duo. As much as Vader hated the Jedi, the Emperor was his and Ahsoka's priority. With a forward dash, Vader moved towards the Emperor, who would use his Force lightning to hold him off easily. However, this distraction would allow Ahsoka to use her new Force ability to summon a Force stun, stopping a surprised Emperor. As Ahsoka recuperated from her attack, Luke thrusted his lightsaber through the Emperor, just before the stun thawed, as the guttural screams rang through the room. The two duos then stopped and turned to face each other, albeit hesitantly. Vader moved to attack first, but Ahsoka stopped him, as her light side powers began to flicker. Vader deactivated his lightsaber. He had done what he had wanted with the help of Ahsoka. This unusual request was the least he could do for her. Obi-Wan and Luke deactivated their lightsabers as well, and Obi-Wan engaged his negotiation mode, asking Ahsoka what she wanted. Fortunately for both sides, they wanted the destruction of the Death Star. However, in return, Ahsoka wanted a full pardon of Vader's crimes by the Rebellion, due to his help in the downfall of the Empire. Obi-Wan stroked his beard in thought. Could he forgive his old apprentice for what he had done to the Jedi? Unexpectedly, Luke stepped forward and agreed upon the deal, sensing the conflict in Vader. Vader guided the trio to a munitions room, staying as far away as possible from Obi-Wan. The temptation to thrust his lightsaber through the old man's chest was bordering on painful. Picking up several modified versions of the reverse polarity pulse grenades, as well as their detonators, they head towards the hangar. Placing several grenades on walls along the way, they find their way to their ships, and after entering them, begin to detonate the grenades. Watching as the Death Star exploded, Vader sighed. Although he had managed to redeem himself, looking to Ahsoka, shadows of his past would haunt him forever. That is it for this series of What If Ahsoka Joined Vader. Please like this video, and subscribe as we are getting close to 200 subscribers, as well as for more What Ifs. And as always, leave a comment on what if you'd like to see next. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.